Thank you, Margaret. Right now, another European leader is sounding a grim tone about the prospects for an international agreement in Copenhagen. Swedish Prime Minister Fredrik Reinfeldt met with President Obama yesterday here in Washington, part of the European Union contingency, meeting with White House leaders. And today, Prime Minister Reinfeldt said, quoting, "A legally binding agreement," this is in terms of Copenhagen, "is simply not possible to deliver." Nonetheless, there is now another agreement on energy issues between the U.S. and the EU. Clean Sky's Dan Goldstein was at the State Department here in Washington for today's announcement. Dan, as we said, there is some common ground here.
Yes, there is, Tyler, and basically a world agreement, though, might be elusive, at least on energy and climate change, but you can tell that stronger U.S. and EU ties are clearly on the agenda, and they are making some progress. Now, this isn't something that's particularly new. The EIA, the Energy Information Administration, and the International Energy Agency, that's basically the IEA, that's Europe's arm of the EIA, they both strengthened ties under Samuel Bodman, Secretary Bodman, under President Bush last year. Of course, the EIA has an agreement on strategic petroleum reserves, and coordination of that is key. But this time around, basically, it's not about fossil fuels. This is about climate change and energy efficiency, and this agreement really is two things that are very close to the Obama administration's heart. So this event really was about the EU and the USA coming together on what they termed the Energy Council, and this was the first time this group met in Washington, D.C. It was chaired by Minister of Enterprise and Energy, Maud Olofsson of Sweden. She chaired the first meeting. As you can see, as Energy Secretary Stephen Chu was there. And obviously, energy efficiency, renewable sources of energy, and how they put it, better means to connect different parts of the market together were on the agenda. And that, of course, as you can imagine, means cap and trade and how to harmonize trading systems if and when a system goes live. But agreements like this obviously are a first step, and it seems it's very clear that these are small steps, and the big steps, such as Copenhagen, are becoming increasingly muddied, and certainly in the United States, whether we get a climate bill, seem even farther than ever before. And so I caught up with Minister Olofsson, and I asked her what she had to say basically about the odds for an agreement. And she said, well, look, you know, you've got Copenhagen, you've got climate change legislation. Here's what she had to say about whether President Obama should be even leading those negotiations. Is this going to be more to your, more in everybody else's thinking, a working meeting that's going to lead to an agreement later on?
I think we will have an agreement. I cannot explain how it will look like, but I think we will have an agreement in one way or another. And I think that's important because every country has to commit themselves to deliver, because the time schedule is so short. If we cannot deliver until 2020, who can believe that we can deliver to 2050? So we have to start and act now, but then we have to discuss how this agreement can be like, because that's not clear as I see it right now.
How important is it that, for the U.S. perspective, that the U.S. come to the table with at least a climate bill that's moved out of the House, or at least has moved out of the Senate? What kind of signal will that send if they don't have any movement in the Senate by the time Copenhagen rolls around?
Well, from a European perspective, we just hope that there can be a signal from the Senate, because it makes a strong signal to the rest of the world that you're committed. But I also understand that the discussion is very, very tough. And I think, from my view, I think U.S. has to see this as a golden opportunity also to create new businesses. Because if we can combine economic growth with environmental care and create a more eco-efficient economy, it gives you a lot of new jobs, it gives you energy security, but it also gives you a better environment. And I think when we combine these two parts of what's going to happen, I think it's easier to explain to the Americans that this is not a threat. The climate change is not a threat. It is a golden opportunity.
Last question. How important is it from the European perspective that President Barack Obama, who already is going to be in Europe, in Oslo, to accept his Nobel Peace Prize, is it important for him to make a personal appearance at Copenhagen to lead those kind of climate negotiations?
Well, yes, and because I think that's a clear signal to the rest of the world that the US is committed to do their part of the work. But of course, he has to have a message with him that you have targets, you want to be a part of the financial system, and you want to deliver. I just hope that President Obama will get help from the American people, both the business sector, the public opinion, but also from the Senate, that he can deliver to the rest of the world. We are looking at US as a role model in many aspects, and I think you can be a role model also when it comes to climate change.
Now, bottom line, Tyler, basically is that even if Copenhagen ends up in a wash, you can kind of get an idea of what the administration is trying to do here, and they are clearly trying to strengthen ties very quietly with Europe, especially around the issues of climate change, energy efficiency, things they agree on. And certainly when it comes to Europe, the Obama administration's positions are in sync, especially on climate and energy efficiency with theirs. That's a far cry from what it was a year ago, Tyler.
An encouraging note, sure. Dan Goldstein, thank you very much.